minute early. It is about 7 p.m. and it is November 1st, the first Thursday of the month. Welcome to the Economic Development Commission meeting in the town of Woodstock. We do have a quorum. We are missing, I think, 3 members, but they are unable to be here this evening. All right, our first order of agenda tonight is our citizen comments. We have an opportunity to hear from citizens here attending the meeting. Do we have any citizen comments? And anything? Okay, so we were supposed to spend 5 minutes, so we'll take a slight break. Okay, now we'll get going. And the minutes, we have minutes from both October 4th and October 11th meetings that have been submitted to the commission. And do we have any motion to approve the minutes of October 4th and the 11th, all in one swoop? Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
Seconded.
And are there any additions or deletions to the minutes? I thought there was something about lighting and there was a number that was wrong, but I'll forego the thing on it. I can't remember the exact number. But otherwise, substance looked fine. Yep. Any further discussion? Anyone? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The minutes are approved. There's another 5 minutes off of our schedule.
We are so good.
September grant discussions. I think at this point I would defer to the Economic Resource Committee and their recommendations from the grants that they have received, grant applications they have received and reviewed and should be reporting on tonight. Is that Mr. Millstone?
It's all of us.
Yeah, it's all of us,
We're
yes.
collaborating on this one.
Okay.
It's 3 of us.
It's 3 of us.
And
There's Michael Malik. Fantastic.
So Sally was going to take EC Fiber.
I will.
You summarize our recommendation for the commission.
I am on the resource committee, so I will present this. And I had some further discussions with David Brown about the application for EC Fiber outreach, and clarified that the purpose of the campaign is to sign people up as they are building the route, so that they are building the trunk route for EC Fiber through Woodstock. So even though we are not an official EC Fiber town right now, people have the opportunity to actually get hooked up while they're building the route. So if the route is going in front of your house, you can hook up when they're there. If you miss that, you will have to wait for the general EC Fiber Woodstock town build out, which may not happen for a couple of years. So this campaign is actually to start getting people hooked up. So it's not just hooking up, but it's actually having fiber. So within a few months, there are people on that initial route that could have fiber this winter. So that's what this campaign is about, which was not clear in his application, and it wasn't as clear. He sort of touched on it when he was here, but I clarified that when I was talking with them. So he had done an ad, which I think was part of his initial application, or if not, I can show it to folks. And we decided as a group that it's still a little, we're not sure what the value is, but we would give him 2 months of advertising to see how it goes, and then he can report back, and if it's looking really good, then ask for additional funding. So the recommendation is to fund 2 months of advertising, which would be $1,000, with a report back on progress to receive additional funding.
Okay, so the proposal, the request at first was for $5,000?
I think it was
$6,000. And now it's been revised down to $1,000 for 2 months worth of advertising in the local newspaper, I would guess.
Yep.
Discussion on this? Yeah.
Does if those 2 months go well, does it then move into the remaining consecutive weeks for the remainder of the year, or?
So then your question is it an automatic 3rd month,
Yeah.
or do we have to reconvene and decide on an
I guess,
additional
yeah.
month? Right?
I mean, he asked
We've
for a
been-
full year,
Yeah.
right?
yeah, I think
So the thing was that we were not convinced that enough people in town actually want fiber. So the idea behind a trial is put in the ad, see how many people actually wind up saying, oh yeah, this is a great idea, we'll sign up.
Are the metrics pretty easy to follow with this campaign?
It seems like it should be,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I think it would depend on, I'm not sure we kind of codified what happens next, but the intent is that they do need to demonstrate, and so it would depend on them to some extent to provide convincing metrics. And partly it's a trial because they've tried other things. They tried postcards, they tried ads, and none of them worked. And
Door to
they
door.
weren't ready to commit. And this also was a bit different in that it was not, we thought originally it was to try to advance this, but they're doing it now. It's not a 3-year wait.
This is actual infrastructure build-out. This is not raise your hand and say you like it.
Right.
Exactly.
This is
The
trunk
build-out
line.
is happening
Right.
regardless.
Yeah.
And so the point is that people see the trucks, but the problem is that if they see the trucks and the trucks are now gone, they've already missed it. So they're trying to get people to be aware that if the trucks are working on your road, you can sign up and get connected now. So that's what the campaign is.
Which again, we very much like the idea of,
Yeah.
but if
Yeah.
no one is signing up, then we don't want to commit to a full year's advertising campaign. So
Right.
we can either earmark 6,000 for the full year and then commit to 1,000 now. That would be one way to do it. Or the other way would be to commit to 1,000 now and say that we will vote again after 2 months.
But, I have a couple of questions about the project itself, but logistically, couldn't we just say up to $1,500, the last $500 being commensurate upon the first 2 months actually bearing fruit, something like that, you know what I mean? So we
Well,
don't have to meet again.
Right, well, the
Right.
ask was
The access for
6,000,
here,
Well,
not 1,500.
right. I was just thinking if 1,000 for 2 months was
Right.
just 500 a month, right?
Yeah, yeah. It does sound a little,
What is success?
Right.
What would success be? I mean, it's easy to, like, if 5 people sign up, is that good or bad?
Good question.
Do we know?
I don't know.
I would think that a percentage, a relatively a demonstrable percentage of people on a street, not just like one.
What
right?
percentage?
Again, I don't know. what-
So we don't have an actual target that they're looking for number of new customers?
Right. I think
Okay,
we make that a requirement,
yeah.
that they, and maybe the basis is signups in South Woodstock when they put the line in.
yeah, but it's coming the other way, probably, so.
Right. Well, I meant historic,
Basis for
I
percentages.
see.
right.
But how many people would sign up? Did they have advertising in South Woodstock? The
Yeah,
question is, how many
we
people would
don't know.
sign up more
That's,
because of the advertising?
right, that's what we're.
It's always hard to know with advertising, right?
Yeah.
So I guess just a question on the time frame too. Anybody know when this is
Are we
supposed
allowed
to start?
take a citizen comment?
Yeah, I was getting a second, yeah. Just get to you in a second later. Just a time frame. Anybody know?
I know that they were in the select board meeting last month to get permits to put their poles up. They want to get their poles in. They're not actually stringing lines until after the poles are in. But they want to get the poles in before the ground freezes so they can string lines this winter. So it's happening in the next few months, yes.
In the next few months,
So I
okay.
think we would do it as a dollar amount, 1,000, and if they don't start for 2 months, well, they're not back to us
Right.
until 4 months.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we don't hold them to we
Okay,
don't dictate a time period. It's a dollar amount. If they think they need more, they can
yeah,
come bring some support for that.
got it. Sorry, Olivia, you had your hand up.
Well, I was just curious if you're all talking amongst yourselves and there's nobody here talking about what you're talking about, so.
Oh, because we had already had conversations with the representatives from EC Fiber.
Okay.
Yep,
that-
Last week,
wanted to
last Monday.
Clarify the process.
yep, sorry about that. Okay. All right, so we have do we have a motion on the floor?
No.
No, we have a reduced amount request that's
Right.
been amended. So is there a motion then to allocate $1,000 from the Economic Development Fund to EC Fiber for advertising to extend EC Fiber to the homes along the route?
I'm sorry, I walked in a little bit late. Was this a request from Dave, or did we just come up with this?
This is a request from Dave, and then
To
in
shorten the amount.
conversations with Sally, they reduced the amount to prove the concept so that people would actually be signing up.
Can I make a comment and then the motion?
Yes.
This feels to me like not a particularly great use of money. On the other hand, I think fiber is really important for economic development, and it's a small request. And so I'd like us to be on record that we're supporting fiber. And this is a first small, I think we haven't done anything up until now to support EC Fiber, is that right?
In words only.
Okay,
Well,
so,
no, well, it was $600, but we did devote $600 to a door-to-door campaign.
Oh, right,
I'm
okay.
not really quite sure what was actually done or what the results were, but we
Okay.
did make an effort.
well, I'd like to keep that momentum going, and this feels like an inexpensive way to do it, so I would propose that we approve this on that basis.
I feel similarly in that, same, I would like to be
So is
able
that
to
a second?
support.
Same as a second?
Well,
who made the motion?
I don't think you
I
made a
believe
motion.
so,
So
therefore,
I
I
don't
cannot.
know. But I do wonder, if door-to-door solicitation didn't invite more people, then I'm not sure really what
Mika?
advertising is going to
The
do.
door-to-door was not an EC Fiber campaign. It was
Oh, it
something
wasn't?
that was done through the EDC, hired somebody to do it. So Dave Brown and the other EC Fiber folks did not coordinate that campaign.
Oh,
And it never really went anywhere, so.
okay.
And it was also a less tangible ask.
Yeah.
It was, if EC Fiber was here, is it something you'd be interested in?
Yes.
This is, there's a,
There's
a
a truck down the
contractor
street.
Yeah.
out front.
Yeah.
Do you want them to hook
Cable
you
coming
up?
off the
Yeah,
back.
yeah. Okay, thank you for clarifying that, I appreciate it.
So we don't have a second yet on this motion?
I don't think we have a first motion, do we?
We
I
do.
said yes, I
Oh,
move that we
I'll
approve.
second it.
Mika seconded, okay. Okay, so further discussion. Dr. Malik had a look in his eye. It was a thought. It was a
I'm
fleeting
just
thought.
wondering why these guys are having such a hard time selling the fiber. I mean, it seems like since day one, it's all over the place, but no one's signing up, and I just don't get it.
Part of it is because Woodstock has decent internet access right now. Decent.
Village.
In the village. And so that's where the majority of your folks are, and they're saying, I'm kind of okay. When it gets here, and I'll do it. So there's not, in other communities that don't have anything, it's really been, it's been very strong.
Barnard
But-
took off
yeah,
really well.
Yeah. And even South Woodstock, I think, has quite a few people that have signed up because they didn't have.
It's just the kind of random roads that have maybe like 5 homes on them that aren't.
Well, it's got to start
Valley.
somewhere, so.
Yeah, so the telephone pole that Sally was talking about is actually on Fletcher Hill Road, I believe, where they've tried to get approval for that. And those homes up there have very poor internet speeds, so it's very likely that there will be a number of signups from that neighborhood all by itself.
Okay.
And we have to remember that EC Fiber went out to all their communities and did a poll. Do you remember that a few years ago? And saying the one who actually had the highest rate of support would win to be an EC Fiber town. And
We were
Woodstock
pretty
was,
low, right? We were
yeah, I
pretty
think number
low.
20 of 23 towns, something like that.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So Dave and George Sadowski and those who have been involved for a long time continue to carry the flame, and they know that fiber is the ultimate in terms of the speed of light coming to your door. Okay, any other further discussion? Anyone? All those in favor of $1,000 allocation, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes do have it. Our second application is from Sustainable Woodstock, green bags / outreach.
And I'm taking that one. The committee, the Resources Committee had a couple of issues with this grant. First of all, while we are very supportive of the Green Bag Initiative in general, we requested some more. We requested that Sustainable Woodstock offer us a guarantee that Max in particular would be on board with selling the bags, which did not come through. And we were also very wary of the high number in the application for staffing, which is explicitly against our mission. So in the end, we are not going to, while we want to be on the record as being very supportive of the green bags in general, and we hope that either Sustainable Woodstock or someone else will come back to us with a different proposal or revise it or something, that it happens, we are not going to recommend approval of this particular grant.
Any further discussion on this particular grant request? Do they know of the inclination of the committee?
Yeah, I mean, we asked them to resubmit,
Okay,
basically.
all right. Great, and then we are moving on to the next, which was the WUHS apparel.
WHS Apparel, the original grant application was a $5,000 grant, so they could buy WASP gear. Based on our discussion during the presentation, follow-up discussions that I had with Kim and Jane, and they're also being advised by Travis Hellstrom at Optimus Center. They've both revised their application, and they're moving forward in ways that they can. And partly to accommodate kind of our needs and what came out of discussions. They are going to, so the primary difference is that they're asking for loans in the form, and it would be phased loans. So there'd be about a third would be a loan to buy gear. It would be Woodstock branded gear, not WASP gear. They've got some WASP gear, so it'd be Woodstock gear. There are conversations with 3 vendors in town to try to see if they can get them to stock at least the Woodstock gear. They're going to try to sell also at the boys' basketball games. They put together a website that is a commerce site, so Square will be able to sell online. And then they're within, so they'd like the first loan about $1,700. They've identified 3 or 4 products that came out of requests from when they were selling before. People said, boy, we really like the sweatpants. So they're highlighting, their preferred gear. And then within 6 months, they want to be able to pay that back within 6 months and then revisit for additional loan. So the numbers are, maybe it's some additional loan or they just reinvest it, but at some point they recognize that they need to see what their sales are like, how much interest there is with the merchants, and then they'll return with some metrics, how they've done, and a request for perhaps an additional loan. The trick for us is how we administer the loan.
Yeah.
So I'm expecting to hear back early next week from Mascoma Bank. And this is a good kind of trial for sort of the simplest type of loan. And perhaps worst case is if they just can't do it, then that becomes, the repayment becomes a condition of the loan. So all grants, and if we do loans, grantees will all sign an agreement, kind of performance agreement, and so the repayment will be in there. It would be a zero interest loan.
Sorry, can you say that last part one more time?
It'd be
So
zero interest loan.
no, sorry, second to last. So if it doesn't work,
Well, if it doesn't work as the bank administering it, their collateral would be the gear. And
Do we want that?
And so if the bank can't administer this, and it's probably it'd be something that I suspect the bank would have to administer for us, because it's not the type of thing that's the reason they would need a loan from us, is because a bank wouldn't lend high school kids, to start something like this. So it provides an opportunity that they would not otherwise have.
right.
So, okay, well, before asking questions, what did your committee think about this revised request?
We like it.
You like it? So can I just ask you some questions then? What is the actual entity that would be borrowing the money?
It would, they call it the, I don't know that they're formally incorporated or sanctioned. It's the Woodstock,
Wasps
Woodstock Wasps
merchandise
merchandise business.
Yeah.
Kim,
WWMB.
Kim, Jane's mom, I think she's a Harvard business gal, and so she's kind of advising the girls. It's as much an exercise in business, learning how to run a business as a spirit thing. That was the seems like the motivation was to learn the business, work together, figure out how to figure out the numbers. And Kim she's loaned originally $3,800. They sold $1,800 worth of gear. They paid her. She's only requiring them to pay them back based on the cost of the product. And well, I guess here's in some ways the kicker. So the $1,800, she was paid $700. They made $700, and it's so they've got a 38% profit margin.
I think the other thing, while we like the idea of a loan for for the teaching moment, I think we felt, and I don't, inform me if I'm incorrectly speaking for everyone, but we also felt comfortable with it becoming a grant. It's a low enough sum of money and a good enough proposal that we felt like if we like the idea of a loan for what it means to them, if the loan were to not work out and we were to be stuck with gear, we would not feel like we had been burned.
Right. The first request was $1,776. So that is, you call it risk if we dependent on loan being repaid. It's at worst case it becomes that's the risk, that's the cost.
I also think they've only sold their gear so far at girls' basketball games. That's it.
10 games.
Yeah, so nowhere else.
Is
So,
it possible to ask a question?
Can you hang on a second? I might have the same question, because there just needs to be a legal entity who would receive the money. It's of some kind. So it's either an individual or a club or a...
Well, Charlie, actually, there might be a way to do it alternatively. If we just, first of all, if we just guaranteed the loan, then Mascoma Bank could just handle it as a loan.
Right, that's what we're hoping to do.
Yeah. So then
that's what we're trying to work out the mechanics of having Mascoma do it.
then they would have to decide who the entity is, and it might just be Kim and Jane.
So we would guarantee it versus Kim.
Right. We would guarantee they'd make a $1,700 loan, and we would guarantee it. And then they would process it, it's a loan, and,
Right, but
Even securing the loan by a CD or something like that.
well, I mean,
with the amount of money,
we could say we've put aside money, I mean,
Okay.
Can I just ask,
Yes.
what is the economic development in that? What is the economic development with what you people are trying to do? Where is that?
Jane made a really compelling case in the previous meeting. So again, a lot of this has been covered. We're coming at it from a perspective that we've seen the grant application already. And part of the appeal is that there is no Woodstock gear for sale in any store. So a tourist who comes to town can't buy, or one of us, can't purchase a sweatshirt that just says Woodstock, which is part of why they changed the...
You can buy Woodstock stuff in every store in town. Maybe not gear, but you can go to Elevation, you can go to 37 Central, you can go to Sudi's. There's plenty of stuff that says Woodstock.
Are there sweatshirts? I don't know. I have not.
Woodstock's everywhere. Like, I'm sorry.
So the point, it's not necessarily even whether or not there's Woodstock gear. I think what you were trying to describe before, working with Travis Hellstrom, is this is a way to build entrepreneurship among these high school students. Mm-hmm. I think that's what the mission was. Mm-hmm. And they had already done something, and then now they wanted to stop doing it with their lunch money, basically. Yeah. I think that was the idea of building. Same with the Optimist Center, with funding that type of operation. Yes?
Just correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you mentioned before that they'd already found 3 vendors who agreed to sell the gear in
They
their
haven't
shops.
agreed yet, they're
They're having
right.
conversations.
And those would be
And
retailers.
Do you know, was that, I'm not sure if it's Kim or Jane is what, or did the students do that, or
I think it's both of them, or the kids with Kim's assistance.
in
She's
collaboration?
kind of an
with the
advisor.
leader? Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fine line, right? Because we're not running a business class at the high school. This is not that entity, right? But at the same time,
I would be careful. I think you're setting a precedent for other student organizations to come forward. And being at Pentangle, they come for me all the time, wanting to do bake sales or uniform sales, and I embrace that. But as the Economic Development Commission, I would be very careful, because you are now setting a precedent that other student groups can come to you and ask for money. I'd be thoughtful about that.
Point well taken.
good point.
But I think, just to go back to the question, I do think, I understand that they put forward a case for economic development, but I think it's worth just sort of restating and just kind of pressure testing, or at least just restating, which is the idea that, maybe this is obvious, the idea that if people are outside of Woodstock, wearing Woodstock gear, that could influence people to come to Woodstock. And that, it's removed 3 layers, but it's also not a lot of money. So it's removed 3 layers to encourage more people to come to Woodstock. Now,
And we're not giving money to anybody.
Yeah, on that note, I think the loan program is a little bit more attractive from this type of scenario versus just a straight out grant.
And the mechanics of working that out, it'd be great if we established this pool, which we've long talked about, but this is perhaps a more tangible thing in that sense. I can speak to either positively or negative about this, but
Yeah.
both sides.
Yeah. Like all of them, they're positive and negatives on balance. We thought they were more positive. It leaned to the positive.
Okay, so the committee is then recommending
Committee is recommending
extending a loan of $1,776. $1776. That's ironic, or coincidental, to the entity yet to be named.
Yeah, we'll call it the Woodstock Wasps Merchandise Business.
Okay, so that is the motion from the committee. Is there a second?
Second.
But who actually made the motion?
I'm just saying Barry made it because he reported it. Did you make, is that a motion?
Oh, that's a motion.
Mr. Millstone, yes. And that was a second, Michael? Okay, further discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes seem to have it. The ayes do have it.
Can I just ask a question? How will you measure success on this? And the Woodstock WASP thing is really, for my kids are in high school, they're not real comfortable with that. It's We Are Woodstock.
It's not the WASP.
They
This
changed
is
it.
Woodstock
It's
apparel.
Woodstock.
It's
This is just a
Okay.
purchase.
So how will you measure success with this $1,000 you're going to give them?
ultimately, it's repayment of the loan in this case.
Okay. Just know that there's a metric.
Yeah.
So WASP won't appear on any of the gear.
Well, they've already purchased some WASP
That's
gear,
sweatpants.
but the gear that they'll be purchasing with this loan will only be Woodstock branded.
Not WASP.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to Woodstock Christian Child Care, expand infant care.
So we'll tag team. This was a challenge for us, and I guess I'd say we don't have a recommendation. It's something we thought the full board needed to discuss. So the application is from our neighbors and friends who are educating our children to be good citizens, and they're providing childcare, which is a critical service in town. If we're successful as an EDC, that need will grow. As noted, some of the questions during the presentation is that what we do need to reconcile is granting funds to a religious organization, because our grant guidelines indicate that fraternal or religious groups with a proposal that promote an individual doctrine are ineligible. And that's generally consistent with state and federal guidelines. However, Sally, I think you did a bunch of research too. Sally
I
and
have
Julia-
now read more Supreme Court
Yeah.
documents than I ever thought I would have, so I will speak to the legality
Right.
after Barry.
So Sally reached out to the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, or reached out to the town, checked with their attorney, and was referred to Vermont League of Cities and Towns, and really didn't have an answer. What he came back with was that, his quote, "The key is to figure out if the granting of funds they're requesting would promote the religion." So I went to the church's website to see if I could resolve that question, and what I see there is that the WCC is a Bible-based preschool and child care center, directed development of the whole child, and facilitate natural unfolding of each child's potential, referencing Luke 2:52, which reads, "And Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor of God and with man." And then it is our greatest hope children know God's love for them and come to know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. So we've got to resolve that. There were at least two. You want to talk to? Should I start with it?
So, should we tag team? Because we came out, we both did this.
Yeah.
We both did research.
Yeah.
We both looked at the same information, and we each came out on an opposite side.
Right.
We each came to an opposite conclusion. So to me, so first of all, there were two lawsuits in 2017 that speak to the legality of federal and state funds being used to going to churches. Which, first of all, the one took place in Cabot, which was for infrastructure. Both had to do with infrastructure, right? The first was a Cabot church that applied for funds to paint. Some citizens brought a lawsuit against the town. The Vermont Supreme Court found in favor of the town, saying that since every citizen walking down a street was impacted by the exterior of the church, it could not be purported to only benefit the church, right?
Well, I understood that it was part of a townwide beautification program.
Not in
And it
Cabot.
was-
They relied on, the Vermont Supreme Court relied on a Detroit
Got it, right,
Supreme
right.
Court, whatever. It's a trail of court documents, which has been very interesting to read. The second is a U.S. Supreme Court ruling in 2017, which maybe some people here have heard of. It was Trinity Lutheran versus someone in Missouri. A church applied for a Missouri-wide, a statewide funding program that redid playgrounds, right? And the Supreme Court found in favor of the church being allowed to receive state funding for playground, to renovate a playground. I was actually really influenced in my thinking by Justice Sotomayor's dissent, which was interesting. Sotomayor and Ginsburg dissented. Everyone else voted for the church getting the funds. But in Sotomayor's dissent, her primary reason for dissenting was that she felt like she believes that the potential for mega churches to receive a lot of federal funding is huge. That this case sets a precedent for mega churches to apply for and receive federal funding for infrastructure. So now ping back to this specific application. This is for a church is applying for $5,000 for in order to expand its child care to infants, right? Nothing that it would be using the funds for, what it's using the funds for is infrastructure. So the parallels to the Trinity Lutheran and the Cabot cases are actually pretty decent. Not the Cabot case, but more the Trinity Lutheran case. The grant is an application to purchase cribs. Like, they've laid out point by point what they're purchasing, and none of it is religious in nature, which was what the Supreme Court found to be the key detail. That nothing that federal funding can go for, or state funding, it cannot be religious, period. But that the line when it comes to material supplies that are not of a religious nature, the line's a lot blurrier. So now, again, the church in question here is not a mega church. So actually Sotomayor's very valid concern is not, to me, as applicable
So I read
in this case.
that she had additional concerns.
She has a lot of concerns. A lot of them are very lucid.
I think she was, I think it was kind of too broad, and I'm not sure it applies here, but she posits that if, that any contribution to a church supports the religious mission of the church, because then those are funds that.
That wouldn't be used for religious.
Right.
Which I also agree with, but to me, the way I see this application, the legal line is very blurry. We are not, I don't see the EDC funds as being hamstrung by the actual legality of giving the money to a church. While I agree in theory with Sotomayor's dissenting opinion in the case of the Trinity Lutheran case, to me, the details of this particular grant application take it outside of that rubric. The fact that funds will go to purchase exclusively non-religious material support, the fact that the testifying letters accompanying the fact that not only Christian families send their children to this daycare, there are other kinds of people who send their kids to this daycare, which to me speaks to a more open, a broader community than merely the church itself, the church community. The value proposition is pretty high. $5,000 gets us care for 4 infants, not all of whom will be Christian. The same argument that I advanced in the case of the Rainbow Play School grant applies here. It's offering a way to be more appealing for younger families, but it's also the issue of quality childcare, to me, is an issue that has tentacles that extend far beyond economics. It's a feminist issue, it's a social justice issue, it's an everything issue. So that the funds of the EDC will be going to support an infant care program makes my support pretty clear, especially in that infants can't really be proselytized. So,
Hang on, we've got a lot of questions up here, I'm sure.
So to be clear, I have some leanings, but on the fence. I'd like to be able to reconcile, because I think the need is critical.
oh, and that's the other thing.
And the services being provided is a good one.
The key to both of these lawsuits, the Supreme Court lawsuits, was that the funds, it had to be proven that the funds were not only going to churches, that the funds were available to anyone who was applying for them. We've set a precedent in giving a grant to Rainbow Play School that that's the case for us. I mean, I hope someone else comes and applies for a grant for an infant care program. Anyone, please. So.
And can I just make one other comment in that as I looked, doing some research, I went online to the state, they have a star rating system for childcare.
Yeah.
And the Woodstock Christian Childcare has the same rating as Rainbow Play School at the state level. It's a 4-star.
So it's tough if there were no complications because of their particular ideology or religious affiliation, then it would make it a lot easier.
Totally.
I guess the other question that we usually come up against is, do they need the money? And I don't pretend to know what the finances of the church are, and I don't want to ask that question, except that usually that's a test that we use. Are there other funds available? With Rainbow Preschool, it's pretty clear that they did not have the funds available, and this was a large lift for them to actually afford it. So
When they came to the grant workshop, the church is already giving them really, really discounted rent. The church has been providing infrastructure for them that exists. What they're hoping to do is, what they're seeking the grant for, is to pay for new items, literally to create a room, an infant room.
So this organization is not the church?
I'm not actually 100% clear on that. That's a really good question. It is run out of the church.
Can I just ask a process question? I thought the idea of the EDC is you sit there and listen to people bringing stuff forward. And you're clearly and probably brilliantly advocating for something. And I guess I'm not quite sure. I'm here, I'm going to advocate for something that's coming up, which hasn't come up. And I'm a little curious about what the role of the committee is. If you guys want to, talk about the relevance of a grant and whatever, shouldn't that be, why are we all here then?
This is an open meeting. The purpose of this meeting is actually make decisions based on research and conversations with those grant applicants.
But there's nobody here
And
representing.
presentations that were made at the last grant meeting.
Okay,
Right,
but
they
there's
were-
nobody here for Christian childcare or,
That's
They-
right.
They were already here, right?
This is our meeting, we just have to, we're required.
okay, I'm just trying to understand the process, because.
I think, Alita, at the last meeting, Julia explained to folks that when they came in, so the grant applications were due in September. At the October meeting, the grantees made presentations. And so then the Resources Committee met to talk about them and gather additional information. So what we're doing right now is going back with that additional information.
Okay, so there's
The-
no real
the-
point of.
No, the
us being-
visioning request came in out of the grant cycle, so it's not part of that grant cycle, so it's in its own little world, which is why you are here tonight.
Okay, well,
So
I
it's
would
a different
just-
process.
I would appeal to you to make that process more transparent.
We certainly try to every meeting. We don't necessarily know why you're here at this meeting. I don't necessarily know why. So people come because they're curious just about
Well,
what's
I
going
thought I
on.
was coming to deal with an application, but at this point, I'm probably going to go home.
No, don't go home, don't go home.
I think it's described in the grant guidelines, that if it's not clear there, then we'll edit those.
But the
different-
visioning request did come out of the grant cycle. It was not part of the regular grant cycle, which is why it's never been part of the grant cycle.
Right.
Which is why it's in its own little world, which has been an issue, so we can talk about that later when it comes up. But right now, so they've already done their thing, and this is just research that is now being presented that is in addition to what they had done last time.
So back to the issue at hand, though. It was just this one particular grant request.
Yep.
Can we speak to that? Is there,
You had a question about the ownership, and I believe that it is, they say that it's supported by the church because the church gives them free rent, and I believe they're under their 50 whatever they have, so they're under their umbrella of the church as well. I don't believe that they're a standalone entity.
so if I can ask, something, the Woodstock Nursery School is underneath the jurisdiction of the North Chapel Society?
The Woodstock Nursery School was a separate entity when it rented space out of the church.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
That's why I was confused.
When I first heard about this, I was very concerned about the funding. I think the phrase that I've come across in some reading is inherently religious activities. And I think that while there are a lot of, I respect the issues that were going through your mind, I agree with your conclusion, but I disagree with a couple of things you said, which I'd just like to get on the record. One is that I believe, and we should probably find this out, that the laws about taxpayer funding and what it can be applied to should apply to the EDC, and I suspect do. Okay, I may have misunderstood you.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Okay.
That's why I was doing all the reading.
Okay, good. The second thing is that while I absolutely understand the characterization of the customers, and it's clearly a multi-religious customer group and a group that's supported by a broader community than just the church members. My understanding is that is completely irrelevant to whether or not
Totally.
this decision is allowed. The only thing that matters is whether the money is going, as I understand it, to inherently religious activities or not. And so therefore, I think there are really, if we all agree on that, then I think the basic question is, it builds a little bit on what you said, Charlie, is if they are really using it for buying cribs for infants and painting a room for infants, that's not inherently religious. The only question is there a shell game? That makes it sound devious, but is it in fact, are there really other resources available? And if so, then we would in effect it would become a little bit less clear. Otherwise, if this is just to do that and they otherwise wouldn't be able to do it, then it seems to me pretty clear that it's not inherently religious, and if we think it's a good use of funds, and I agree with you about childcare, I think that does lead more directly to economic development than, say, T-shirts, then I would be in favor of it.
I
don't know if we know the answer to that
One
question.
thing that had been running through my mind was asking for a commitment from them that no EDC funds would be used to purchase anything religious, period. Just to get that completely on the record and to have that be a very clear line, which I...
So
We have to do that, actually.
Yeah.
You mentioned about there are religious activities in the nursery school. I think that is...
There are. We
Absolutely.
asked them,
Right.
they said that they sing Bible songs, and they
Readings and.
do readings, yes, which complicates the issue. I mean, I think what it comes down to me, is that there are two questions. The first question is legally, can we give them money? And I think that the reading that I've done leads me to say that legally we can, as long as none of what we're doing, I mean, certainly the playground at Trinity Lutheran was teaching its kids at its religious schools, religious-based education. You know, all of these different cases that I've been reading, like textbooks are purchased at religious schools, at Catholic schools are purchased with federal funds, but the textbooks that are being purchased with federal funds
Or history.
are history textbooks.
Right, exactly.
So the line, we can, so to me, the answer is very clear that we can legally give them taxpayer funds, as long as we stipulate that nothing is being used to purchase anything religious. Now, the second question is, should we, right?
Right. and
Am I in favor
fundamentals.
of the grant proposal? And I come down on the side of yes, because to me, it would be a question of waiting for someone else to come in with a secular, I happen to not be a Christian, so to me, this is not my creed. I hear the God content, and it doesn't make me excited about it. However, I'm really wary of killing the good in favor of the perfect, right? Or it's a very good option. There are families, the letters that were sent in with the grant application testify to the impact that this kind of childcare has on a family who needs it. So that to me is, that speaks to the benefit of the family.
Can I ask a question? When reviewing this, there's one page. Is that all? Am I missing something? Because I only got one page for this application, and it's pretty thin. So I'm just, if this is it,
There's only 2 pages.
because this doesn't outline
No, this
anything,
one
like
is
where the
not.
funds are going, or
Should
what your
have gotten
expenses are.
But Julia has
4
something else.
pages, but
Okay, because I didn't get it.
Here's a PDF if you want to take a look at it. It's 7 pages.
oh, 7.
Can I ask a question while he's looking? So I know a lot about preschools and early ed, and have run nonprofit childcare centers. So number one, I'm a huge supporter of creating more spots for children. I know that the state is pushing more spots for 0 to 3. But my question is, they have a lot of funding, I understand, to get that done. So have they asked for funding through programs like Birth to 5, or there's other foundations like Henderson Foundation who I've received grants from
It's a really good question.
very easily.
My conversations with them, and granted, my conversations with them were in the context of them coming to the workshop, the grant workshop, in September. So this was the very beginning. It's a more on the ground, right now we need it question than that. I do not doubt that if we suggested that to them, that they would apply. Well, I don't know. I don't know them. I don't know. I think that's a really good suggestion. But I do know that they want to extend under 18-month care in January with these funds.
And then
So-
do that by getting more cribs.
Do they have staffing?
I believe so.
I thought their presentation was summer, not January.
Was it summer?
Yeah. Summer and then next fall, for sure. Yeah, they're not, I don't think there's any time crunch. I believe they said that they weren't able to get some of the state funds, though, because they were a religious organization. But then again, whether, I don't know what they asked for and who
That
they
might be-
asked,
that
so.
might be that, the other
There could be
foundation.
that there are certain ones that do and some that don't, but they made that comment at one point, and I think it's recorded in our minutes from their presentation.
Good.
There was one grant, I remember reading it that said summer or
Right.
fall, but possibly summer.
Right,
Is that the one?
right,
Because I
that's
can't
one,
remember
yeah.
which one it was.
Yep, that's the one.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's any real-time crunch, but they did indicate that they were having a hard time finding other sources.
They indicated that they were, that their waiting list has grown tremendously. And I'll be honest, my concerns over in the last month have been more with the legal questions than with the,
Fundamental questions.
yeah, I just wanted to know if we could.
No pun
if we
intended.
could.
I agree with John, Julia, that it, to me, it just comes down to the legal question. And so so that the only direct legal advice we have is from Vermont League of Cities and Towns. Key is to figure out if the granting of the funds they're requesting would promote the religion. So is that our measure, our legal measure?
I feel honestly ill-equipped to make a legal decision.
Yeah.
And, but if on the merits of the request to fund that, can we recommend that to the select board of the grant request to expand early child care? Then that may be the recommendation that we make, with the caveat that the select board themselves need to consider the legal implications as well.
I mean, the town of Cabot had a lawsuit over this last year, so this is not, this is not a non-weighty, this is why we wanted to open it up to the whole commission. We did not feel prepared to offer a recommendation and shoulder that responsibility.
Well, I would rather than kick the legal question to the select board, I think we should, if we're not certain about the legal position, I would suggest we hold this and figure out a way to get more
There
comfort.
is no answer,
There
though,
is no
John.
answer.
That's
It's
the
great.
issue.
Oh, okay.
There's no, like, everything I've read led me back to the Supreme, like, to either the Vermont Supreme Court or the Vermont League of Towns and Cities that Sally contacted. We had hoped for a clear-cut answer from them. They said, ask your town attorney.
Do we have a town attorney?
We did not ask because I asked you if we should, and we decided not to.
We decided for some reason that.
Because
that
it was pretty gray, it was
it
pretty
it's
obvious
gray
that it
to
was
begin
right.
with.
Well,
But it can be up to the select board to defer to the town attorney. They would ask for an opinion on it.
Can I just say, you're going to have a lot of gray issues, so I think you should figure out what your precedent is going to be with gray issues. To me, I know I'm going to be speaking to something that I know y'all don't support, but I would put it back on the people applying for the funds, that they do the legwork.
That's a good point.
It shouldn't be your job, right? I mean, that is just not, you're not equipped to do that. If people are gonna ask for funds, as someone who applies for grants all the time, it is on me to delineate why I deserve to get X, Y, and Z. You all shouldn't be like, oh, we should do this, we should do that research. No, when someone comes and appeals for a grant, they need to do the legwork. I just think you need to be clear on that, because you all shouldn't be researching the laws. Unless that is what the EDC has got, some sort of crazy thing that now we're going to be hiring lawyers and stuff. I'm just saying.
We often do go back to the applicant and ask for more information, such as the visioning committee. So that's not without precedent. On this, they wouldn't be able to provide us with any clearer guidance than what we have now.
I mean, I hear you, like, it would have been great if they had said, per the Trinity Lutheran Supreme Court case of 2017, federal funds can be used in X, Y, Z.
It's still, I think it's on the person or organizations
professional
applying
grant.
for
It's
a grant.
a Professional
that they do the legwork and then they come to the EDC.
Absolutely.
All right, so we need to move this. Point well taken, but we also need to realize that we don't have an attorney on staff. There's no clarity for us. As much research as
Yeah.
you can do,
No,
that we're not going to come to a
But you
conclusion
shouldn't
on
have to
this.
do research, Charlie.
Please, Alita, let us conduct the meeting.
All right, I'm sorry.
All right, thank you. And if it's something that you want to pass to the town attorney and have their opinion on it, then that's great. It's the question for us is this a worthy request in and of itself?
I think that to not go on record, continuing to support early child care would be foolish. And I think it's one of the most critical things that we can do. So, whether or not we're allowed to do it is a different question. But I think, if that were not part of the question, then to me it's a no-brainer.
Okay.
Well, I would say, I feel that we should come to a point of view, which I don't think which we cannot do at this meeting, about what the comfort about legal. I don't think we should, I understand, we could push it to the select board, but I think it should be our duty to do, whether we do it or the applicant does it, it should leave the EDC with a point of view. And I don't think we can I think that's the case. There's other ways to do it. I'm not saying it's ridiculous to push it to the select board. But I would feel more comfortable if we were to come to a point of view. I don't think we can do that here, because we're saying it's gray, and it may end up being gray, but at least that we have a town attorney. I don't see why we shouldn't talk to the town attorney, and maybe talk to the applicant again and ask them for more support. And then if we can't come to a legal position, then, but I don't know that we've done everything we can to do that, so I would rather delay this by one.
So John, I will say that the Vermont League of Cities of Towns is essentially a legal entity for municipalities. So they are the people that we go to for this kind of legal advice. They did say consult the town attorney, but every time we consult the town attorney, it costs the town money. So we can do that. I think it would probably, I mean.
Are we at risk? Is there a risk of a lawsuit?
That there is a risk of a lawsuit, so then the question becomes, is it our job to determine what that risk is? And to the point that was brought up, it could be suggested that the organization applying for the money also have a legal representative at the select board meeting, just to take that view of the story. It does get sticky. This is not really clean.
Could we withdraw the grant if we're sued? Could we make the grant contingent on not being sued?
The Vermont League of City and Towns insures municipalities and cities across Vermont. Is Woodstock insured by the Vermont League of Cities and Towns?
The Vermont League of Cities and Towns provides a number of services to its member municipalities, including retirement plans and insurance and
I'm
that type of
aware of
thing.
a number of lawsuits where the town is.
But, yeah, I don't think there's an insurance against lawsuits from that. But they provide legal advice,
I will say
but
that
not without indemnity.
in regards to lawsuits, I did have my attorney, my father, look over the Cabot decision and the Trinity decision, and he came to the conclusion that we would not be opening ourselves up, especially given the fact that the Rainbow Place School grant.
Established the precedent.
Yeah, we've established a precedence of supporting
The same kind of activity.
in a non-denominational context. Therefore, there can be no argument that we are offering preferential treatment to a church, a religious organization.
As long as we
there's
word it
no-
that it's going towards non-denominational.
Yes, if we word it that it is going towards non-denominational goods and material purchases.
Which is what they've outlined in that.
Yes.
So who knew that tonight we'd be talking about Supreme Court decisions affecting the Woodstock Economic Development Commission?
November Mika did.
November. Do we have enough discussion before we actually have a formal motion? Seeing no hands going up, do we have a motion then? coming from the Economic Resource Committee.
I have Julia's note that I could read, and what you had said in one of your emails, that it'd be approved with the following restrictions, that we ask the church if they can commit that the funds that the EDC is giving them will be used. Wait, I think, hold on.
I don't think that was the best written email
No, that
I've
wasn't
ever
really,
proposed.
that none of the funds that we will be giving them will be used to purchase religious materials, and that there won't be any religious content for the infants.
Actually, could we switch that
The second
around
one,
and
I'm
say
not
what?
sure. That's the thing.
I
Now,
think
now,
we can
I don't think the
only
second
Yeah,
one.
could we just switch it around and say what the money will be used for?
Okay.
So that the money, if we just say that the money will be used for, for materials, painting,
Material purchases to
cribs.
support
So
the
to
0
support an
to
infant program, and that the
6
infant
week to 18
program
month program.
will not involve, the words that I've seen are worship, instruction, or proselytization.
Yeah, that's a good way to word it.
Yeah.
That
Did you get that, Sally?
No, please do that.
That the money will only be used for, well, here's some words, will only be used to support the physical purchase of cribs and
Of material.
preparation
physical
materials, and that none of the funds will be used to support worship, instruction, or proselytization. Proselytization. Is that properly spelled? Proselytization?
Yeah,
No T.
proselytization.
There is a T. Yeah, it's misspelled.
Proselytization,
It's
yeah.
a White House document.
For worship,
Worship, instruction, or proselytization.
It's a spelling challenge.
I think it's.
I'm just going to put it in.
Proselytization, yeah.
I'll worry about it later.
Right.
Okay.
I'm just thinking you might want to put in construction of labor and part of that too.
Yeah.
Because not just material.
That's a
Yeah,
great
yeah,
point.
good point, yeah.
That's an
Something to do
excellent
with work.
point.
Right.
So, physical purchase of infant, purchase and installation of infant care materials?
Yeah, it should be for labor and materials
For labor and materials.
and equipment purchases.
Non-denominational laborer.
May I make a suggestion? Can we,
So are we closer on that? Hang on. Are you on the wording of the motion?
Well,
Okay.
I've got a comment. Can we just keep it as simple as the Vermont League of Attorneys' recommendation that it would not promote the religion? Activities will not promote the religion. That was his guidance.
sorry,
But I think that-
I am actually just gonna say what I was gonna say. Is there a possibility that we can take this to an email? Because this particular wording, this particular
Yeah.
topic, this particular grant or loan or grant is particularly tricky and just requires some deep thought and some deep wording and some just checking in and rechecking in. So maybe we can just move to the next one and we can take this offline.
Yeah,
Is
because
that
the
an
thing,
option?
like, the thing about wording this rider is that it has to be, look, it is a religious childcare organization, so there is a religious content to it. And to
Mhm.
expect them to take that content out of it is unreasonable, I think.
So
So the wording
Regardless
has
of
to
how I
there's a
feel
lot,
about it.
there's a lot in
But-
here. It's not something that we can do in
Yeah.
5 or 10
No,
minutes,
that's a good
or at
point.
least it shouldn't be something that we do in 5 or 10 minutes.
Fair enough.
Focus on resolving the legal issue with the applicant.
Mhm.
I think what you're saying is that you don't want to vote on this
I
right
don't
now.
even want to
because-
make a motion. I
Right,
mean,
because the motion needs to be worded better.
Exactly.
Right? But that we could actually massage the wording, circulate
Yes.
that by email if we agreed to vote that way.
Yes.
And I'm not sure they need to have a decision right now. We can check with them, and it might go to the
And
next
even if they
meeting.
did, I don't think that that's something we're equipped to do at the moment. So I think we have to punt.
But there is a general sense of the meeting, if I may be so bold as to say that the request is supported, but that the details have to be worked out.
Provided we can do it without, getting ourselves into a legal
Yeah.
pickle.
I
Yes.
would agree with that.
Okay. Okay.
I'm telling you, this month has been interesting.
Wow.
Good job, bud.
I need another Kit
Good
Kat.
job.
Yeah, you need that. And by the way, there's still chocolate up here for anybody that doesn't.
Anybody who needs it.
The shortage. It does not go home with me. We have a next one. Oh, let's just skip over community vision. I don't think there's anybody going to talk about that.
There you go.
Oh, I'm just going to do my thing and leave.
We all have to be friends at the end of the meeting. So next issue is community visioning. So where are we?
So I will just explain that I had suggested that the Community Visioning Group, which I have been part of, put together an RFP and present it to the EDC back in August, I think we presented it, as outside, I think it was September, outside of the grant cycle, because I thought that this should be an EDC project. The people who have been working on this particular visioning project are a group of nonprofit and other community leaders. And it all came out of some discussions that happened, started 2 years ago. And last spring, a number of folks, 20 to 30 people, attended 2 different meetings here in the town hall to discuss moving forward. And this small group of people stepped forward and said, okay, we'll pull this together and get a proposal to the EDC for funding. So that proposal, that RFP, went to the EDC several months ago. And in the meantime, we've continued meeting and tried to ask some of the questions that the Resources Committee had. So I'm sort of stepping back because I'm in this funny position right now where I actually had started on this visioning project before I was even sitting here at this table. So I have continued in an advisory role, but I feel like there are other people here that should be speaking on me. So that's just to explain where we are.
Fair enough. For the
Sorry, I
record,
derailed the meeting earlier. So 2 years ago, I started a conversation about the future of Woodstock with folks invested in the community. The question that I posed is, where do we want Woodstock to be in 10 years? Do we value a movie theater, public tennis courts, and swimming pools, all of which depend on funding from the community? As a native, a parent, and the executive director of Pentangle, I fear we are trending more toward a tourist destination / retirement community. Woodstock has always been a tourist destination with little or no ethnic and very little religious diversity. Having said that, there was in my youth economic diversity. I learned how to ride a snowmobile in Bridgewater. I enjoyed having pancakes for dinner because my friend's dad worked all night in the night shift in Randolph, and everyone could purchase necessities in the village. For a myriad of reasons, times have changed. My mother's generation dying off, vacating houses surrounding the green. With that, philanthropy, because that generation knew what philanthropy meant. The declining school population and the rising per pupil cost and the rise of online shopping has left us with a shell of a village now inhabited by seasonal homeowners, a downtown with prohibitively high rents, especially for creative entrepreneurs, and retail shops most working people can't afford. Even local businesses trying to expand, such as Kedron Valley Veterinary Clinic, are getting a pushback from folks who don't live here full-time. Coupled with that, the pendulum has swung, perhaps unbeknownst even to its advocates, to marketing and business development that appeals and attracts largely to a white, affluent families. There are no discussions, debates, or EDC grant application criteria that discuss or encourage diversity on all fronts, racial, religious, or economic. This process, our visioning process, could open a dialogue. We could talk about what barriers exist for people of color, for the LGBTQ community, for the middle class to move, settle, and work and make Woodstock a more inclusive, more interesting place to live. Otherwise, we become, as friends said to me, we become a gated, ungated community. We have learned from the past election that complacency has its cost. My father, Walter Payne, died 2 weeks ago. He was for many years the publisher and editor of the Valley News, the brains and fundraising behind the Montclair Museum, the Kilton Library in Hartford. I mention this because he was a mentor to David Briggs, a force behind most of the economic growth in White River. Since then, David has become my mentor, and we agree what Woodstock lacks is creativity, collaboration, and community. I would also add that we have lacked a unity of purpose. There are a host of organizations doing great work, but in isolation. It is our hope that this visioning process will bring us together across the economic spectrum, from the seasonal homeowners, some of which are not just second homeowners, but third, fourth, and fifth homeowners, the folks who work in Woodstock but can't afford to live here, and the folks who do live here and struggle to pay their property taxes. I really hope you support our visioning process.
Thank you, Lita. Thank you. Is there other information on the visioning process or community visioning grants that are we prepared at this point? Do we have the grant application? Is the Economic Resource Committee?
So what is being asked for is, it's $25,000, right? $25,000 to, it would not be paid right now. It would be earmarked to eventually pay for a facilitator to run a town visioning process. Our subcommittee had some questions about what that entailed, what that meant, what the deliverables might be. Not only, like, in an we're the Economic Development Commission, of course. And I will say that, Alita, I share a lot of your concerns, especially around diversity and Woodstock's trending age population as a younger, newer resident myself. My concern around the visioning process had been three. Number one, what is the deliverable? What is the concrete thing at the end, right? And that question was answered as I did a little bit more research. The previous visioning resulted in, among other things, the East End Park. The existence of that park directly came out of conversations that were had at the visioning. So
Well, I wouldn't say directly, but
Yeah.
indirectly.
It was derivative.
Sure, but the point is that that the visioning can catalyze more than what I had initially seen. My other concerns had been that the process would be the same people who opine on Woodstock things in general. I am not interested in the same people who run all the boards continuing to have the same conversation about what Woodstock needs. So,
Can I just say to
well,
that?
can I finish? So that had been my concern, and I think that is something that can be worked out in strategy with a facilitator. I don't know that there's an answer for that that can be had right now. It will remain if the commission decides to fulfill the grant request. That will remain a concern of mine until after the process is done. And then my third question had been, why now? Why right now versus next year or in 2 years from now? Because a lot of looking back at the previous visioning documents, a lot of the same issues persist. The previous visioning brought up concerns of housing, which continues to be a problem. So is this the best use of $25,000? Are we better off just doing something to address housing with that $25,000, given that that's still an issue, and say that we'll do visioning next year or the year after, once we've dealt with some of the issues that are still persistent?
And also, besides that they're persistent issues, is that there is some momentum to address.
Yes, that we have just
many
paid for the
issues
housing
that
study.
came
Are we
from-
better off? Exactly.
Says East End, East End, housing, the
Age, demography, like
website,
how do we attract
right.
younger people? Like, we are in process as an EDC actively working on ways to address the very issues that you're talking about. So are we better off earmarking $25,000 as an incentive for young families to move here, right? Is that a better way to address the exact same concerns that I know that the Visioning Committee wants to address? So
So I'll just say, the goal of visioning is to engage the community and to get people involved. And part of the issue that we have right now, as you say, is that the same people are doing, and they're getting burnt out. But if you open it up to more people in the community, and we discovered this after the last visioning session that we did, is that there were more people that got involved in some of the issues. because they now knew what they were invited, they were asked to participate. And so I think that, I personally think it's time, because it was, 12 years ago that we did the last one. And it's a very different place than it was 12 years ago. And and I think the EDC has talked about, engaging people and doing the public outreach for the EDC. This would be a really easy way to do it. So, and also the opportunity is there for the EDC to do some outreach as part of the visioning, and to let people know more, and to have a more formal process of letting the public know what is going on and what activities they're doing. It just, an outside facilitator helps bring these things together. I don't see that there's much on the EDC right now to be able to really do that kind of targeted outreach that I feel we need.
So the $25,000 is being requested to pay for somebody, to pay for a person to go out and do this work, correct?
And we have put together an RFP. So the RFP is actually, we have talked to 4 different facilitators who all have very different processes. They're very different. So they would come back with concrete proposals about how they would do it. And some people do a big visioning session, but it is leading up to either a visioning event, so how to be inclusive and how to get people engaged, to an actual event, and then the follow-up for what do you do with the information that you gather. So it's not just an event, it's a process that may take. When we did it with VCRD, they were engaged for, I'd say, at least 6 months, if not longer, that they stayed on top of it. So
that
it's
was
like
12 years ago, you said?
That was 12 years ago.
So perhaps a leading question, but the $25,000 for the facilitator, so if the deliverable is, or if the goal is to, maybe it's not even refocused, maybe all the same things come up, but if the goal is to engage the community in moving these efforts forward, is there additional cost to facilitate that? Is this a $25,000 and done, or is it a long-term investment?
No, I can speak to some of that, because VCRD, when they led the last session, their recommendations came out. One of them was, for instance, establish better walking maps of Woodstock, and to connect all the different hiking trails. And so that required the actual work to create those maps, print them, and then that always becomes an extra cost on it, and signs on top of that. So I went and attended the visioning process that they had up in Burke. And Burke has 2 towns, East Burke and West Burke. And they're very different towns, because Kingdom Trails and Burke ski areas, and East Burke and West Burke is a town that has been kind of left to dilapidate, for better words. They had this meeting, and one of the main things that they recommended was to create a community septic system for the town of West Burke and the town of East Burke. Well, that's millions of dollars. So that was part of their conclusion that came out of that process. So this is only, just like our revitalization committee.
Right. Well, I know it'll lead to kind of hard costs to do those, but what I'm talking about is, are there more costs to facilitate it or administrate it, or to keep these things moving forward?
I'm
just
sorry,
overhead. Are there additional overhead expenses?
That would be in the RFP, and that would be part of, that would need to be called out as part of the RFP. So for instance, in one scenario, if they have a big community meeting, there may want to be food and, a way to get people there. That would be part of the cost of the project.
And then once there's a deliverable,
Yep.
so the visioning process, and then, okay, here we are, here's a memorandum,
Yep.
But the next 6 months or the next year,
Yep.
what happens to that paper?
And that's typically the follow-through piece, so that they would be on board. And what VCRD did is they actually helped put together teams to work on the particular projects, and helped organize the first couple meetings, and then stayed in touch to make sure that people were following. So they transitioned to a volunteer group, local volunteer group, but what they did is they set up the structure.
Right. And so that's part of the 25?
That's in the RFP, and that depends on, how they propose it, but there is the follow-through,
Sorry,
Go ahead,
can we
Mike.
get copies of the previous visioning documents? Just, it'd be interesting to see kind of.
I think I shared those with you way back
The
when.
RFP that came to us for the September meeting, they are linked to them. There's like a bullet point.
Dropbox.
There's a Dropbox with all kinds of
The
stuff.
document that Geraldine brought to the September issue.
I mean, I'd love to see kind of what was,
Yeah.
what was actually,
Yeah.
done after
Yeah.
that came up. Because I feel like for the past several years, we've been spending a lot of money on studies. And we get all these studies, and like a housing study is going to tell us the same thing that we already know. But we have another study.
However, to me, this doesn't feel quite like a
It's not a
study.
Yeah.
To me,
It's still not
this
giving you any
seems.
deliverable, other than, we need this, but okay, we need to raise $5 million
Okay,
to
I'm not
do
sure
that.
if I agree with you on that. I think that this is very similar, actually, to the work that Du Bois and King is doing. And I think that it kind of goes in line with, okay, so we are gathering information, we are collecting it all, we're having conversations with the community about what we're learning, and then we're putting price tags on it. Just the same way, it doesn't necessarily mean, okay, great job, guys. There's still, I don't know, anywhere from thousands to millions of dollars behind that, but.
And the fact that sustainable Woodstock, I mean, again, the East End Park example is, to me, the most compelling argument in favor of funding a visioning, because the fact that the previous visioning led to sustainable Woodstock, which, if I'm understanding this correctly, right?
That's exactly true.
Like, that getting the people in the room together around a facilitated conversation around what was necessary, resulted in the creation of a new NGO, which then resulted in.
Right, I guess my fear is that
work that
we
the
have,
EDC did not fund.
because we already
Or that no
have
one
the
funded.
revitalization thing happening.
Well, but I
And then
think
we're
that
gonna
this
tack
is in-
on a
I think
whole
that-
nother plan that's gonna require a whole lot of money. And so
No,
I think
Michael.
maybe
But
the
I
timing.
Right,
think
is it
that
at the
this is
discretion of the
in
chair?
tandem.
We want to make sure all voices are heard as well. And I think, John, you wanted to say something as well.
I just have quick comment. No, but I don't want to.
No, go ahead.
I think that the town needs a new visioning effort. I think the evidence of that, in addition to just hearing what we've been talking about and what Alita read, is the fact that we have a town hall revitalization planning process. We have an emergency services building planning process. We have the Dubon King revitalization process. The Recreation Committee has a major project going on. We have an analysis of overall facilities of the town going on. That's not an EDC project, it's a select board project. We have the housing study going on. We have an analysis of how much debt can be taken. Right? All of those things separately point to the fact that we need an integrated visioning process. This is not likely to be that. Because in order to have an integrated visioning process, we need those other projects to align and fit in, and for someone, and I don't know who it is, I don't think it's us tonight, and I don't think it's Alita tonight, or her group, to get these other projects, fit them in together and say, these are all part of visioning. We've been doing some work on it. It's probably time for an integrated visioning project with very much the kind of objectives that she described. But I would be very opposed to funding that until we get these other projects either finished or agreed to line up. I mean, I'm working on the town hall revitalization. I'm perfectly happy to have some visioning team tell us that this is where it fits in. Look at this, don't look at that. Or report back, whatever. But I'm very uncomfortable doing that and having, is the visioning team going to not talk about town hall and not talk about housing and not talk about the downtown walking and not talk about or is it needs to fit together. We need an integrated plan. So I would encourage the visioning committee I would encourage us to do two things. One, tell the visioning group, fantastic, you're exactly right, just pause and hold off for a minute. And then I would say that the EDC could go to the select board and say, we're now starting, you now need to bring these projects and efforts in line in a way and orchestrate them, put them on a piece of paper and show how they fit together. We have a proposal for a visioning project that could sit on top of that or not.
How do we know that the visioning project doesn't do what you're saying it won't do?
What's the proposal for it to integrate with the town hall revitalization team?
It's I think part of the process is it gathers all the information, just as you just did succinctly, and said, these are all the things that are going on. Now prioritize the things at the end, prioritize the things that you think are important to achieve the vision of it. And so it does force a lineup of those things.
Okay, so then the team that I happen to be working on, I'm not trying to be defensive about it, needs to know that its priorities will get reviewed by the visioning committee.
Yeah.
And we're going to give the visioning committee that, I mean, the town hall revitalization team currently thinks that it reports to the select board.
And you do.
So that's, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that if the visioning committee, so
I'm just asking
there's
a
a
question.
prospect, I think there's a prospect of a lack of clarity about
Yeah.
who's driving the process.
Yes.
And really, I'm just asking that we
Sally, can you speak to that?
kind of try to clarify.
How all these disparate...
So I'll just go back to, I mean, the idea of visioning is, it's a much broader community conversation. I mean, as Alita suggested, I mean, it talks about, I mean, and when we did it in 2006, a lot of different topics came up. And they came down to 4 general topics, and then one of them was the bike walk paths. One was the merger between town and village, which was a big issue. One was the East End, and the 4th one was community identity. And those were the 4 groups that continued on. So those were the 4 things that came to the top of the pile of all the concerns in the community. We have so many other things. So we're talk about the aging community, the diversity issues, the infrastructure. There's a lot of things that we can talk to. So what John is talking about is really just a very small piece of what our whole community is. It is a lot of different people with a lot of different issues, and in the visioning process, you come together and you talk about them, and some of them will come to the top and others won't. And so right now, we can't even say, as you're going through this, what might be discussed. So it's really an opportunity for the community to have a conversation. It really almost should be called community conversation than visioning, because it's a time for people to get together and really say, where are we going? What are we doing? So all of these things that are sort of in the works are part of that, but they're only, really, when you look at the big community, they're only a fairly small part. I mean, we have such, you know, I was just talking with somebody about the schools today.
Right.
And all of those things that we haven't even touched on, but it will be an opportunity for people to talk about all of those things.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversations around the school. If you've been following some of the, profile of a graduate and some of the visioning for the actual school system, it's totally separate from that, but it's very important for us as well. It's incredible.
So it's not a study in the sense of, we're going to say this is what, boom, 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 what we're going to do. It's more to get a sense of the community and help people come together and have a direction of things that we want to work on together.
Barry?
It seems like, correct me if it's not, is that some of what John's talking about, some of that integration is part of the town plan.
That's more infrastructure than it is. I mean, we're talking, I don't know, help me here, Charlie. We're talking, the feeling of the community, how we work as a
right.
group.
Well, I'd had some skepticism about it when I first heard about it, because it seemed like it did ignore, and when we, had the meeting, it seemed like it did ignore kind of what the efforts that are being undertaken now, that really also came out of that first study, the River Loop Trail, and so.
Well, that was before that. But.
I would hope, if this were to move forward, that it would, it's not a completely blank slate, right? The conversations are the same. Everything that Alita talked about, we've talked about, in the last 2 years at this table. And I think the thing that kind of excites me more about the visioning effort is what Sally said about it being an opportunity to gather community, to actually get people to do things, not to just reimagine what this might be. And because there's a danger to doing that, and because it's what really happens here is so influenced by economic factors we have no control over.
Absolutely.
And the people that are moving here are the people that are moving here. They can So, and there's, I think we can't just imagine what we want to have and make it happen, because it's all within the context of economic forces that we can't control.
But if we are gonna go ahead with a visioning process as a way of engaging the whole community, I just think then I would be very supportive of that if we were to do it in a way that recognized and encouraged to continue the existing initiatives. I think to say that the people who are working on those existing initiatives will at a minimum be confused with this is an understatement. And so, if basically the idea is, I think we should therefore be quite explicit about it and sort of say, listen, these are going to merge in the future. And visioning is about getting lots of community input and engagement, and it will certainly touch on many of these existing projects, but it's broader than that. So let's keep these projects going, and we're going to figure out a way to merge them over the next 12 to 18 months. We don't want the existing ones to stop. And if we're just explicit about how the two fit together, then I think it will be synergistic.
So you would support it if it was presented or really managed that way?
Presented and managed that way, right. I think there's a risk of some people sort of saying another project.
I think there's a risk of that, and I mean, I am the newest person in this community in the room, I think, and I am the youngest person as well. Is it on the EDC?
It's not always going to be true. You're going to catch up.
I will one day catch up, but I will say that our hesitations about moving here were exactly the things that were stated 12 years ago. So to me, there's not, and they're the things that Alita brought up: the lack of diversity, the aging community, all the lack of housing for working class families. These things are not unknown. And that they stand in the way of the community's development is not unknown. So to me, the value of a visioning, I am really, I'm very 50-50 on it, because on the one hand, I think if it results in things happening and in there being some fires lit under behinds as far as getting moving on those issues, then I'm highly in support, right? But if it's just more talking about exactly what we already know is the issue, that's the point at which, and I don't know how to guarantee, I don't know how to say,
We can't guarantee it, but we can't do it without starting.
I think John's point, it does help, because there's, if we've got a lot of new ideas, there's limited, part of the reason we need visioning is because things aren't happening, because people are being burned out. We're not engaging community, so there's a limited bandwidth to the community and the volunteers. And, I would hope that I think what your recommendations does is it protects us from diluting what's already happening. And, it's kind of the groundwork's been done on these things. Let's bring them home before we start to dilute, kind of dilute the bandwidth.
I also wonder how much of exactly, this is opening a can of worms, and I apologize, and I've only partially thought this through, but the reality is that so much of what we're talking about...
Disclaimer noted.
Yeah, no, the reality is that part of what we're talking about is legal questions that are not going to, is it possible to put, the empty storefronts, is it possible to tax out-of-town landowners? Can we stipulate a certain amount of affordable housing in the village? Can we, these are not things, the solutions to some of the really, really trenchant issues are not going to come out of people talking to me. They're going to come out of infrastructural legal change on a systemic level.
But there are things that could be done, right? So if you've got a list of 100 things and 40 of them require serious, in-depth legal conversations and change in systems, and 60 of them are just a matter of getting people to sign up to do something, then you've just crossed 60 things off your list.
And also, Julia, I will say that the conversation, if you find somebody who's passionate to get things done, this is their opportunity to step forward, and they may just champion those efforts.
Yeah, on different things.
And there's a certain sort of magic, I guess, that happens when you have people come together at a table and the creative juices are flowing, you know, and they're talking about different projects they're working on. I've seen that happen time and time again where, you know, maybe you have a group of people and they're all sort of working on something, and it could mean that they rent a storefront to, you know, whatever it is that comes out of that, or there's an idea for a new business and that somebody's been wanting to start and that comes out of it. So to me, I see it as an opportunity to really talk about all the different projects that all the different nonprofits and business people are working on, and find some sort of common ground and really use that to leverage and look at the overall way Woodstock operates.
So, you know, I wasn't really keen on this concept before, as some of you may know, but the more that we talk about it, the more I think there is an opportunity to, even though we are already working on many of the issues that are at foot, to engage a broader section of our community and bring them into that conversation, who may not know that something was studied 12 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, and re-engage those people to try to get those projects closer to the finish line. And so it does make sense to me, especially with the list of things that John listed. I wasn't keen on it until you listed all those things. It's like, holy anyway. And sometimes we can become frustrated as EDC members when somebody says, you should be working on this. Like, we have been working on that for 3 years, and this is what we've done. And that's very frustrating, but people don't necessarily pay attention until it affects them.
So I think, are we getting close to a vote?
I think we're getting close to a vote.
I think I'm a little confused. I think when the idea was first brought to the table tonight, I envisioned it a lot like the way you described it, John. Like, oh, okay, there's somebody else that is getting paid to kind of help bring these things home. And I'm not sure if that's the way I'm supposed to be understanding it, or if it's just more. I just want some clarity, I guess. Yes, there is somebody who is getting paid to bring projects home, projects that are already in existence, the long laundry list that you just gave that is helping to kind of make all of these pieces fit together and make things cohesive and help to keep momentum going and help bring in more community support, maybe bring in more volunteers to help make these things happen? Or is it creating more projects?
It's not creating more projects, it's prioritizing the projects that the community feels are important. So it's having a conversation to make sure that people know what is going on. So the projects that are ongoing, no, it's not for somebody to come in and facilitate them and bring them all together. It's more to get the community engaged so they're aware maybe that these projects are going on, and then there are more people involved. So it's somebody to actually help the community move on community projects by prioritizing them and getting other voices into the conversation.
And making sure all of the voices have equal timbre, that the loudest, most forceful don't become.
What I find compelling about this sort of new definition, which comes more from your description of it, Sally, than from Alita's, is the breadth.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. And so, you know, that is something that these 8 projects don't get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
real value added.
how things
That is
work together.
that is the number one goal.
Okay, that should be clear then in the,
Yeah.
in the proposal.
I kind of hope it was, but maybe not.
Yeah, and because it's
Maybe
not
it
just,
was,
yeah.
it's not just, we're going to put 6 people and you're going to be the visioning committee.
Right.
This is a community visioning process, yeah.
Last time we had several hundred people in.
Right.
And we have received statements of support from
30,
many
yeah,
different
30, at
people
least
in the
30.
community and organization, you know, that represent a wide variety of the population that would get there, you know, make sure that we're getting the input from the youth, lower income, you know, aging population.
Yeah.
Yeah, my only concern about that is that I didn't see a lot of younger, smaller business owners on that list. Like I saw a lot of, you know, and
Just
I
didn't get there.
Yeah, no, I'm sure, I guess I want to go on the record as saying that to me it's really important, like a lot of those names are people that I know are already involved in one of the things that John brought up. So like, and that's what I mean when I say the same names over and over again. Like, I
Right.
want to know why
Yeah.
Nikki Van Voorhees' yoga student, I want like, I want you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Right. The farmer that doesn't have time for meetings.
Exactly, the
I
the
want
people who
that
work,
person.
a lot, who don't
Right.
Yep.
have time to volunteer the way that,
Yeah, that's definitely really
Yeah.
key to this whole process.
Okay, so we're still on item 4 on our agenda. This is,
It's only 5:20.
yeah, it's only 5:20 according to the clock. That's great. So can we bring this to a motion in terms of the community visioning? Is somebody ready to offer a motion to allocate $25,000 to fund an RFP to lead a community visioning process?
John, what were your enhancements?
Well, to just make it clear that the project would be communicated and managed in a way that would continue that would allow the current initiatives to continue to operate effectively. I guess. But just from a process point of view, is there shouldn't this go to the
Resource committee?
resource committee, and shouldn't there be a?
it did. No, we've had we've had lengthy discussions about it.
Oh, sorry,
We just
are
didn't
you-
come to a complete, we, on this one also couldn't come to a definitive recommendation.
Oh, okay.
We
I didn't
certainly, we
realize
looked at different things, we looked at different, I saw 2 facilitators' recommendations, and they were so divergent, and I felt very ill-equipped to make a judgment as far as, at least, I don't know about Barry, I felt like I could not judge which was better than the, like, what, I do not tangibly know the differences between.
I think the purpose for us to get those was to get some sense of what the process would be,
Yeah.
like.
But did
And then
you
there's-
answer the kind of questions that the resource committee, like, you know what the end products would be, and you know how the funding would be, and it meets the criteria for your committee?
Yeah, I mean, yes, we just didn't come to a conclusion
Okay.
about whether we definitively threw our weight behind it. I mean, again, this round was really tough.
Okay.
Because with previous grant.
So you're bringing it to the
rounds-
full committee?
Yeah, with previous grant rounds, we have come out on very clear, this makes sense for the community, this does not.
So without recommendation, it came out of the committee.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't realize that. Thank you.
And so I don't think we have a motion. Is there a motion? Seeing no motion,
Is it possible to make a motion to think about it?
that would just be no motion.
Move to move.
Well, it's been on the table since September.
I understand that.
Yeah. So I defer to my fellow members as to if you want to see this happen, then we do need to have a motion in order to recommend it to the select board.
Well, I guess I would like, the reason why I'm hesitating is I would like to see, if this is being, in effect, brought to the full EDC committee, I guess I'd like to see the kind of presentation that I imagine the resource committee had, which basically, says in detail, here's what we would do, and now maybe modified slightly, or maybe it doesn't need to be modified to incorporate the comments that were made here tonight, so that we can be comfortable with it. I mean,
So there is a lot of information, but I will say that the RFP that was presented originally was a little, it wasn't precise in the sense that we have talked to 4 different facilitators who all have very different ways of approaching the problem. And I can't remember what our deliverables were for it in the RFP, but that is one reason. So in order for it to become more detailed and precise, we would have to sort of steer in one direction of facilitator.
Then steer.
So, but that requires us getting a lot more information from them. And so then, that's why the RFP goes out, because then they will provide a whole program that explains how they get and go through the entire
Wait, sorry,
process.
I'm confused. Why do we need funds to get more information from them?
Because we're asking them to do a full proposal.
And we have to pay them to do that?
No, we don't, but we don't want to go out to a facilitator and say to them, spend 2 days putting together this proposal. And then, oh wait, we're not interested.
Is this an RFI or an RFP?
It's actually an RFP, is the way it was written. So we could do an RFI, but we kind of already have a lot of that information, but it's general as opposed to specific to our community.
Would that be a way to go forward, though, to ask for specific, I mean, if the temperature of the board is general support,
Yeah.
but the board is not prepared to, right now, allocate $25,000, could you ask for proposals, vet them, come up with what you think is the best one? Because again, when I looked at the proposals, I did not deem myself equipped to really judge among them.
Yeah.
We just got those three, didn't we?
That pretty much explained.
Together her,
Yeah.
they really sort of explained each of their processes on, right? On those
Right,
three
but there
that
weren't
we
any
got.
dollar figures with them either, so we don't
And
really.
there also wasn't like your take on which
Right.
one
No.
would address
No, I
the
mean,
issues that we've talked about here, you know?
yeah, It- yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think-
we could do it, it's just,
Chicken and egg.
yeah.
I mean, is it possible to narrow it, to one or two? And because after the discussion tonight, there might be some that stand out that are more in line with what we've been talking about. Because I'm not sure if we were just to get all the proposals, I don't know how.
We're not supposed to pick.
No, you wouldn't.
Yeah, we wouldn't,
The
right.
provisioning committee was going to receive those proposals and review them, and then come back and say, this is the one we have selected, and.
See, I would like to say, I mean, I'm just sort of judging from this, the way the discussion might be heading. If what you're looking for is a statement that you could give to those folks to say, listen, if we get back a proposal from any of the four of you that we think will actively engage the community on raising this broad set of questions, including many of the issues that Alita raised, then we're prepared.
Yeah.
It's very likely that we're going to fund $25,000. I'd be perfectly comfortable
Yeah.
giving the committee that leading indication. And then I think you have to go do the work to present either back to the Resources Committee or to us
Yeah.
a proposal that
That would
we
work.
can evaluate.
If the commission is willing to say, yes, we think that it's worth going forward on this visioning process, I think that would give the visioning committee
Yeah.
a way to move
Okay.
forward.
Can I make a motion that I think it's worth considering, further like, that the visioning process has merit? I mean,
I think there's
Right,
a
I think
sentiment
we
of the
just need
board.
Clear understanding of what you would want us to get in order to approve it.
Well, I think at this point, if the commission says that they're behind the process, I
Yeah.
sort of feel like we could actually send that RFP out, say to them that there are funds available, and then wait and see what they propose for their thing.
By taking into consideration the discussion that we had this
Yes.
evening and those points raised, yeah. Yeah.
Can we say that supporting a process that focuses on engaging the community and, I forget what you had said about.
Allows the existing initiatives to continue
Right.
effectively.
Right,
Right.
right.
So that's in the form of a motion, I think. It was, and Sally has it all written
No,
down,
the
so.
sentiment is that the board supports the visioning process that focuses on engaging the community and allows, what did you say, John? I have it up there.
The existing initiatives to continue to operate effectively.
I'll take visioning for 300, Alex.
So is that a motion, Commissioner Millstone?
And was this a motion to fund, or was this a
No,
motion to?
to support,
Oh,
to
yeah, to
support.
support. Yes, that was a motion.
Second.
That's what I thought you made, and
Second.
John
You
seconded.
did. Well done. That's
Yeah.
that's why you make the
Any
big bucks.
Is there any further discussion? I will throw a Kit Kat at you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
And no, sorry.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it.
5:30. Beginning.
All right.
Okay.
Before we go through items 5, 6, and 7, we have folks that might be interested in some other items that are here before we take too long, I'm thinking, Ray, right?
Thank you.
And I apologize for not recognizing that earlier. But would the commission be willing to suspend our existing agenda to be able to take up civic revitalization under
Yes.
number 7?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. So let us go forth on civic revitalization. And your name for the record, please?
Ray Bourgeois.
Thank you.
First of all, Sally, Beth, and Joe, I want to thank for volunteering to go to the meeting on such short notice. This started October 16th, when Sally let us know that Mike was stepping away for a while. We met with the Boys and King yesterday. Right now, the only estimate they have is for sidewalk replacements, which they have concrete sidewalk replacement or asphalt, which is basically $417,000.
All of it.
But that's only the beginning.
Yep, we know that.
There is obviously landscaping, wave signage, everything else that can be imagined, redoing the green, the parks, still has to be priced for in the future. It's been a while since they've been working on anything, so that's, and the sidewalks came from, that was a priority from the August, what meeting was that? August 8th meeting that everyone met at, and that was one of the priorities that came out, and that's why they concentrated on that. They will also assist in applying for grants in the future, and I think that's something, you know, Sally could really help on. Right now, we're at 75% of the budget, the original budget. We may be requesting more funds. We have to review the expenses. The meeting was set up quick enough that we just want to get information back.
Yeah.
And then we will find out where we need to go for more funds in the future. The timeline is November 19th is going to be a business and ownership meeting at a location to be determined. They'll be at night. I believe it's going to start at 5:30 to 6 for a couple hours. November 20th.
What is that, Ray? It's like a meeting of downtown businesses?
Just the businesses and the property owners, because that's what was presented in the original.
Okay, so it's 11/19, is that a Thursday?
No, November 19th is a Monday.
Monday.
Monday before Thanksgiving.
Not doing the 12th, was the 12th out?
Yeah, 12th up.
Okay.
November 20th, we'll report to the select board with the sidewalk estimate. I will try and, because I have some experience with parks and so forth, try and get some ballpark estimates on my own to give to them.
So is this, confused, so it's, to start just with sidewalks and 400,000, I guess my expectation or misunderstanding was that they would be providing a comprehensive package that would, I was picturing a matrix of all of the possible efforts with prices, and it would be prioritized. So, you know, it may be that there are less expensive efforts that we could do that would have higher benefits.
They are.
Sidewalks.
This is just
All right.
the one thing they concentrated on.
So why go to the select board with this budget? if
Because
we have
the select board requested a budget number.
for
Jill
sidewalks?
asked specifically
For
for
budget.
the big ticket items, specifically the sidewalks.
Okay.
So
Wasn't the
that-
sidewalks supposed to be paid for by the town? But-
Well, so that they
Okay.
would know in case there was something that needed
Right.
to be earmarked.
Okay, great.
So we're going, there will be, I hope to have numbers for the parks and so forth, best I can. There will be estimates, they're not going to be,
Sure.
And I will say that the sidewalk budget is quite detailed, so they can
Yes.
pick and choose, so there's a lot, I mean, they did a really good job.
But again,
with
this
it.
is town,
Yep.
this is
Right,
town
this is-
funding. This is
right.
not EDC funding. This is, yeah.
And then, so sidewalks, is that,
it's 90% of it's the asphalt sidewalks that need to be replaced. They're 4 feet wide, ADA requirements are 5 foot wide, so that's going to evolve long-term if we go forward. Just the sidewalks, that's the cost. Then you have curbing replacement, tree removal replacement, so
right, and how, that's what I was wondering, if benches or lights or meters or
coming
any of
in.
that becomes part of it, seems like that's one,
this is
Projects.
this is one minute part of the project.
right. I mean, just from a
Expense-wise,
constructability
it's a lot,
standpoint,
but-
there may be some of those things that you wouldn't do the sidewalks and then come back and, you know,
Right,
tear
if you're
up.
going to tackle
Right,
tackle
yeah.
Pleasant Street, then tackle all
Yeah,
of them.
no, it would be,
Right.
yeah, it's going to be broken down,
Uh-huh.
and I will, when I get back to the Boys and King, I will find out, but I just,
Yeah, she asked for a number. You got
yeah,
it.
and I just started this
Yep.
23rd, so. And that's basically it. And then after that, we're going to request the select board to put aside time for the next meeting, to also have a public outreach meeting, instead of having a separate meeting.
On the 20th?
No.
On
In December.
In December, okay.
Right.
So are they going to, in addition to the spreadsheet, I mean, they were good at presenting visuals in their RFP, right, in the response to their RFP. Are they going to present that as to say, this is the picture of what we're proposing, here's the costs that go along with all those pictures? Are they actually going to provide the pictures?
That's the hope.
Yeah, okay, the drawings.
Again, it just,
Yeah, all right, 'cause I thought that's what we were
That'll-
talking about.
That'll happen.
Right.
that's the
Okay.
hope.
That'll happen.
In, Ray, in discussions with them, one of the things where the sidewalk is, that I've always been interested in is trying to make that capable of handling both pedestrians and cyclists. We've had that conversation. Was there any talk about them, with them at all?
There was talk about bike lanes.
Yeah.
There's not enough money, you'll never find enough money to make the sidewalks and bike lanes the same. You're gonna have to lose, you'd end up losing parking spots, which is an issue unless we're gonna put up a parking garage, which I don't think we will.
It depends if you get Millstone on it, you'll have a parking garage.
It's just the sidewalks, you need 5-foot minimum for ADA. And then you need about a
Are you
5-foot.
saying that the sidewalks don't currently meet ADA, or
If you replace them,
they're 4 inches now and they need to be
4
5?
feet.
4 feet and they need to be 5.
they need to be 5 for
Yeah.
ADA.
So she had talked about some experimental shared bike lanes?
Right, on Route 4.
Yeah,
On
stuff
Route
that
4,
you don't
yeah.
have to build in
Right, yeah.
permanently, but you can try it out for, a month or two and see how it goes.
It's basically gonna be a share a road in town,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
there's no room to
There isn't.
a dedicated bike lane anyplace.
It's
Just
a nice
bike
idea.
lane on it.
It's
Yeah,
a nice
right.
idea.
All right, shut up, Charlie. Yep, I got it. Okay, sorry, Ray.
Nice, very nice.
And that's, when we met October 23rd, it was Beth, Sally, and myself. I volunteered to be the chairman. Joe Dinatello was going to back as either co-chair or chair to help with keeping us going.
Okay. Wow, all right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
Thanks, Ray.
so the 19th, do you have a place yet?
No.
I think Joe said
To be-
the cafe.
He's going to try the cafe, but he has not confirmed that yet.
Yeah, you better get Sam on board with that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so thank you for restarting the process, and it's great to try to get that within the timeframe the select board needs the numbers.
Right, they put it in the budget, and we put it someplace else, it's not gonna,
Yeah.
it's just having, I'm assuming it's just gonna have the dollar amount in there that's gonna be important.
This fits into that whole visioning thing. Yeah.
One piece of it, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Any other questions for Ray?
No, great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. All right. So that brings us back to items 5 and 6, the financial report and coordinator report, which you did receive via link to a Dropbox, which is really technologically advanced
Did
for this
you
group.
guys manage to do that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, because it really just makes life easier.
Much easier
It
for
certainly
everyone.
does.
It was
That's
great.
So-
It is there.
It's there, and it will
Yeah.
stay there, so I'll put everything in the,
It wasn't very responsive for my iPhone, though.
just have to get used to that.
Good night.
To get an
Good
Android.
night,
Yeah,
thank you.
thanks.
You need to get an Android.
Did you say you need to get an Android?
Yep.
So Sally, do you want to elaborate on those two?
Not particularly.
Okay.
John helped put together that financial, the way the finances are stated. There's a couple other pages in there as well, but I didn't figure you needed all the details. So that just gives a general overall picture. John, we just there's some general categories, those can be changed, but for now, it gives you a snapshot of where we are.
I would actually suggest that we do have a discussion about our financial history and future, just not now.
Not now.
Do we
No,
schedule it
definitely.
for a future meeting?
That sounds good. Yeah, and thank you for putting it together in that format. It's fascinating to look at that. It felt pretty good to actually see all the allocations in there.
I think that there is one top-line message, which is that Woodstock is growing. And the best estimates, as measured by the money we're getting, by 9% last year, in the 2 years ago, by 6% last year, and in the first quarter by 9% this year.
Well,
That's really extraordinary.
or at least tourism to Woodstock.
I'm talking about tourism. I'm talking about the things that, as measured by our revenue. So beverage, maybe there's alcoholism is causing it, but it's either tourism or alcoholism.
Well, it's
One or
one
the other.
significant thing about that is that beats the state average.
Correct.
And
That
it
beats
beats
the
the
national
other
average.
large
Exactly.
city town
So there's some-
averages in
so it
Vermont.
ca-
It's meaningful.
Yeah, so I think the discussion begins to get, Barry, to your point about outreach and explaining what we're doing and some very, very rough way of saying, are we accomplishing anything? I mean, there's a lot of good stuff in here, so I would just suggest in the future we put it on the agenda sometime in the next couple of months.
So if there may be something quicker, just a quick aside, is that Stephen D'Agostino had a contract to write 12 articles. He's written 11. He will prorate his contract, or he'd like to write another article before the end of the year. Is this something we want to?
We now have regular presence from the Vermont Standard. I don't know your name.
I don't know how regular. My name is Madeline Carla.
Hi, Madeline.
But we have had the Vermont Standard reporting at every meeting since I've been here.
Let's give her candy.
Maybe she'll come back.
She
had a Reese's piece before.
Did you see a story of the night? So any
Oh,
ideas?
You've got
It's a
like 4
good
options
night.
tonight. It's a good night.
So I'm just saying that the Standard has been very responsive and very,
Right.
on top of our discussions, so.
Well, I think he was doing is more promotional kind of articles and backslapping, or, if there was a message that we wanted to get out.
So
I'm a new person. I would
am-
rather us have a conversation, the
Yeah.
board see it first before we.
and-
Oh, yeah. What's happening is we would describe what we would hope you would write, yeah.
Yeah, we've got Katie Burdan doing content development for the website, which is really, really deep if you're going on her
Yeah.
blog posts and stuff. And it is interesting. So we can take that up outside of tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. That'd be great. We have anything else from the financial coordinator?
Nope.
Then we're on the general EDC update. And I understand that we have a written submission from Courtney Lowe.
I can just read what he sent me. He said that the content loading continues incrementally, so this is on the website. The community website committee is adding Ms. Cook as to represent the EDC, and another chamber member will be added. They are working on an arrangement for the chamber to sell ads. The EDC needs to have final approval to have Beth do that. The EDC will also need to review the website budget to include maintenance and enhancement fees. Courtney recommends that we stick with Origin for 6 more months because we still need some website enhancements. And since they are the developer, they know the site well, and they have heard our needs. And that was his report.
Do we need to revisit the memorandum of understanding,
Yes.
which is due in?
Yes, at the end of the year.
The website committee, which I am now on, has been talking about that. It has good, I cannot vouch for the specifics of it, but it's moving in a good direction that I think the EDC will be more comfortable with.
Great.
Yeah. Very nice. We've heard from the Economic Resources Committee. I hope you don't have anything else to report.
No, the only other thing is that we're going to hire Katie to do, do I need to ask for money for that right now? No, we had a conversation about that. Anyway, do we need, for getting word out about the storefront incentive?
No, I think that we
to
said that
get-
would come from the general EDC
Great.
administrative budget.
Yeah, so the plan is to get, to hire Katie, who's doing a fantastic job on the website. She has a very rare skill of both, she can write and she can market. She's
Nice.
She's very good.
She's very good. So the idea is to hire her to do a little bit just of promo and getting the word out about the storefront incentive money that is available in an effort to get some bites on that.
And the only thing I'll say about economic resources is we are going to revise the grant application because we discovered that it was, in
Yes.
this last round, that there was some questions we just weren't asking. So that will come up, and we still need to set our grant dates for next year. That will still happen. And then there's also another discussion, because in the last month I had conversations with 2 different potential new businesses in Woodstock that were looking for some sort of support. And the economic resources, they're not really grant people, they're more like, they're new businesses, and they're kind of ready to go right now, and trying to understand what kind of process they should be going through. Because it's not like they're a community grant, they're actually a business. So we need business plans, and we need other kinds of information than we would need for the community grant. So we're still talking about how that works and who does it.
And are we leveraging the Green Mountain Economic Development Corporation?
Haven't on these 2, they were
Okay.
not, they're very small.
All right.
But-
Yeah. 'Cause, Woodstock does belong, obviously,
Yes.
to that
Yeah.
organization. Okay, great. We're moving right along at a rapid pace. Civic revitalization we've already heard from, and recreation assets. You saw the write-up?
That was it.
That was it.
Nothing
Michael, do
to
you have
add.
anything to add to that?
I don't, I missed that last meeting.
I like Tom's enthusiasm. Tom Weschler is on the committee, and he says, we're not going to talk about it anymore, we're just going to do it.
Nice.
And I think that's admirable. We just need to be very careful about doing that. As the WAMBA, the Woodstock Area Mountain Bike Association, has found out when they went and put a pump track in and then got their Act 250 permit afterwards, they had to take half the pump track out. So it was, and that's a whole nother story in and of itself. It was a very painful process, and they deserve a lot of credit for withstanding the process.
Stick to it.
Okay, and that concludes our EDC updates. There is other business. Is there any other business before the?
No.
No,
No other business.
no business.
I will, at the risk of not having it officially in writing, we have word that one of the commission members is unable to continue in his current position, and that we will go to the select board, and there's nobody here, obviously. And that is, we'll go to the select board and let them know of the vacancy once we have the official word in writing, and ask for a replacement. So that's new.
I did have a few email exchanges with Jill about our EDC's involvement in that process, and she was positive about that.
Oh.
So we just need to, I need to follow up, and things like, it seems like we would have good input about kind of that balance and range and dynamics and
Yeah, good.
skills.
Good, I would hope to be open to that. The first time the EDC got appointed, just for history's sake, it was everybody who applied got on.
Yeah.
And that's how we ended up with 10 members, and one said, I can't do that, so we ended up with 9. So that's how the number got defined. Yeah.
That's so funny. Really? That's how it became 9? Is
Yeah,
that a true
that
story?
was it. That was really the
And
history.
then there were 9, exactly.
And then there were 9, yeah.
It's a good thing 50 people didn't show up.
I know. Is there any other new business? With that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to return.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, ladies and
Thank you.
gentlemen.
Thank you.